everyone, and welcome back to Redefined Radio. Today, I'm really excited to share our guest and her story with you. So, today we have Kyla, who is a storyteller, a podcast coach, and the founder of KD Creative. She uses a decade of project management experience to help business owners expand brand visibility through podcasting. She lives in Ohio with her husband and toddler. But when she isn't podcasting, she's trying new cookbooks and filming YouTube videos. Now, one thing that Kyla has not added as of yet is that she is a lawyer, which is why I'm super excited to share this story with you, because I want people to be able to see just how far and wide a law degree can go. So welcome, Kyla, to Redefined Radio. I'm so excited and so happy to have you.
Yay! Thank you so much. And I do not even a plug. My shirt says podcasters are storytellers.
Absolutely.
Yes, that is my whole thing. One of my podcast coaches, she says that she takes one theme and that's her theme for the year. But she told me this like 2 years ago. And I'm like, you know what? Storytelling is going to be my theme for here out.
Yes.
Because it's so relevant and prevalent in everything that I do. So thank you so much for that generous intro and welcome. I did used to have "you are a lawyer" in my bio. Like, I think it used to say when I'm not recording "you are a lawyer," I'm doing this. And, you know, there's no shade to it. Part of that decade of project management experience is project management at law firms. Mm-hmm. It just depends on the audience, right? And if people want to know more or like what you did, they'll just add in a little bit more.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Yeah. So before we dive into it, I just kind of want to explain to the listeners as well how we even got connected. So I've shared in previous episodes my pivot journey, how I even got into podcasting, the fact that my podcast was like 1.5 years in the making. I just kept talking myself out of it because I couldn't connect my experience in my career with this want of creativity, right? I wanted my podcast to be an outlet for my own creativity, but also a way that other people could tap into their creativity as well. But I guess like the more logical part of me was just like, girl, that sounds crazy. You are an attorney. Like, What are you talking about? You need to be billing hours or getting cases. I don't know. And so I was searching for people who had similar experiences. I was searching for some type of validation that this is something that, number one, I could do, but something that also made sense to do. And just by the luck of the draw, LinkedIn being the platform that it is, I ran across your profile and I just felt like it was a message from above that, no, this is absolutely something that you should do. And I love the fact that "You Are a Lawyer" talks to or highlights different people in the legal field that use their legal skills for all different types of things, or even people that maybe are still practicing or in the legal field, but they have side hustles that have nothing to do with the law. So I absolutely love that. And I love the fact that you are in the space and you've been doing your podcast, "You Are a Lawyer," for a while. So it just gives, like I said, validation that this is an arena that not only I can get into, but any other legal minds can get into as well. So knowing that we both share a similar background, we both went to law school. Can you kind of explain how you even fell into podcasting and into the creative space from going to law school?
Yeah. So I think fell into podcasting is the best description ever, because when I tell you walking, tripped, stumbled, and fell into podcasting. So I grew up with a creative brain. I went to an arts elementary school where I'm talking like, hey, it's Wednesday, we're making ceramic birds. Or, you know, paint your self-portrait when you're 7 years old, right? And so I had that foundation. And I also have 5 siblings. I was the only one that went to this arts elementary school. Don't ask me why. Well, actually, it was something with like zoning and like how far you live from your school. But so I grew up with that. But I always wanted to be a lawyer. Like, actually, I take that back. I always wanted to be a judge. I used to put on my dad's robe. He had this long black robe, and I would walk around and be telling people what to do. Because I am right between 2 boys. I am the middle child, but the only girl between 2 boys. So I don't really have middle child syndrome. I mostly have bossy girl syndrome, right? And so I would be wearing his robe and telling them what to do. And I wanted to be a judge. So it wasn't until probably high school where I looked it up and I was like, to be a judge, I got to be a lawyer?
Right.
want to be a lawyer. And so then I was like, okay, well, let me look into this some more. So then I found out I needed to go to law school, and I was like, not interested, right? I love, and when I say love, I mean, I thoroughly enjoy getting my hands dirty and doing work. I love working. I get so much satisfaction out of taking something that is incomplete and seeing it done. My first job was being a bagger at a grocery store. And I'm like, you got all these things coming down the, conveyor belt, and you're organizing them into these paper bags. I love it. I absolutely love it. So for me, I equate working with like making things make sense, or organizing them, or finding a pattern, or finding a structure. Don't even get me started about moving in and out of states. I will pack up a 4-door car like nobody's business. Like, I love all of that, but I didn't know that was project management. Who would have told me? I didn't know that was operations. Who would have told me, right? So all of this to say, I had numerous jobs. I worked at an editing company. My first job out of college was in the national sales office for Botox.
Wow.
So I go in there and listen, and I was like, oh, I'll take this job. And I get there, so cool. And salespeople are creative, right? My boss is jumping on the chair at this conference in front of 1,200 people, yelling at them for sales, sales, sales. And I'm like, yeah. And so I kept thinking about law school. I kept thinking about being a judge, taking someone's chaos or misorder and putting it in place with my verdict, right? With my final decision. And then that's it. I still saw that as process and project management. So I keep thinking about law school, and I'm doing a great job at work. And everybody's like, no, don't leave. I'll give you more money. Okay.
Oh, they always
no, don't leave. I'll give you more money. Never, never, never. But the thing is, I come into an office, and I've probably had 5 different roles. Maybe one of them, I was not the first person to take that role. Mm-hmm. So when I went in as the office assistant, the administrative assistant for the sales office, no one else had that role. So I come in and I sit down with you, and we talk and I take notes. And then here's a binder of everything. And when someone comes in, this is what they do. When someone responds to you, this is how you send the email back. And when you need to book a hotel or book a conference, these are the people you reach out to first. So I've always been doing that because I was always the first to take on a role. But also I enjoyed it, right? Plenty of people have taken on a new job, and they're just like, if you're not training me, I'm not doing it. But I'm like, oh, well, how do I make this make sense? For me, that includes writing. And so then I would also be giving them a gift when I left. Because I'm like, I know I'm leaving, but look, you can replicate me. I made a binder, right? So I decide I'm going to law school. I get into Case Western. I'm waitlisted in Cleveland. And I'm like, okay, this will be fun. This will be cool. I'm dating a guy at the time, and he's like, he helped me with like the LSAT and prepping and all the stuff. And he's like, well, I went to college in Cleveland. You should go to Cleveland. So I go up there. I do my walkthrough. I take my best friend with me, and she's sitting in the back of the class like, what the heck? Because when you do a walkthrough in law school, they let you actually sit in the class, sit in the back, right? I'm taking notes, and she's like, you've never been here before. What are you doing? And I'm like, no, this is what I said I was going to do. So like, I have to throw myself into it. She's like, you don't even go here. Like, what are you? But that was how much I was like, what is he talking about? I feel like it was a torts class or something. And I'm just writing notes, and I'm just like, wow, like I get engrossed in the experience. Okay. So I didn't say this before, but I went to Ohio State. I'm from Ohio. I've wanted to leave Ohio. So then I get into Southern in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm like, this can be my college experience. I'm leaving Ohio. So I actually ended up going to Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge, Ohio. My then boyfriend and I split in law school because law school is very busy and intense, and the law is a jealous mistress, and she does not have time to call people back when you are supposed to. And I'm like, look, husband, boyfriend, here's my schedule, right? My time is blocked. I'm going to contracts, but that means I have to prep for 90 minutes before. And so here, and I can talk to you for 15 minutes between, and he's like, I'm not scheduling time to talk to my girlfriend. Fair, right? And this all makes sense because he is my now husband. And when we got back together after law school, I wanted to start a blog. I was like, I've always loved writing. I've always loved taking people's stories, putting them on paper, making it make sense. And he says, I mean, that's cool, but I think you should do a podcast. Blogs aren't it right now. Right now it's podcasts. And this is 2019. Okay, but I know how to write.
Right.
What do I know about a podcast? I only listen to one podcast, How I Built This. That's literally the only podcast because I love stories. And that podcast is about how you built a company or a business or whatever, a product. What do I know about podcasting? He's like, I think you should make it a podcast. So in my mind, I'm going to find guests, interview them, make notes, put it into a blog. Why don't I just record it so that then I don't miss any of the commentary while we're talking? And if I need to use it, I can listen to the recording, which ends up me being up at the middle of the night. Okay, so what do I do with an audio file? How do I turn it into this? What is a podcast? What do I need to have, right? I literally fell into podcasting because I wanted to share the stories of all these cool people that I was meeting, didn't know what to do, was up all night looking it up. A friend of mine from law school, I told him I wanted to start a show. He sent me this book called So You Want to Start a Podcast. I still have it. It's upstairs. And like the first chapter, the intro, she says most people quit podcasting after 7 episodes. They get bored. They run out of subjects. They realize it's more than they thought. That I'm going to record 9, have them ready, and then I'm going to launch. Right? And so then I'm reading, I'm doing my stuff. First thing people want to do is find a name. Then they Google it and find out somebody else has the name. No, you know what I mean? Like she walks you through. So you want to start a podcast. These are all the steps. The book is by Kristen Meiser. And so it's really funny how the law and law school and all of it intertwines with the podcast because like even from a podcast or law school classmate sending me the book and then had I not reconnected with that guy who's now my husband, maybe somebody else, maybe I would have just been like a huge blogger, right? Maybe I never would have even got into podcasting, but all these little things connected. And I fell into podcasting and I love it. I don't love it as much as working, but I have created a role for myself where podcasting is my job that pays me and my mortgage. So yeah, I do still love podcasting. Podcasting is the work and I do still love working. So
that is an amazing story. And I think that it really speaks to your ability to problem solve. Because what I think a lot of people end up doing is they have this idea and it's like, well, I don't know how to do this. And they let that be what deters them from actually fulfilling and starting on the idea versus what you did, which was like, well, I don't know how to do a podcast. I know how to blog. I'm a writer. But your mind allowed you to say, okay, what you would have written, you can record. And the same way that you would edit a blog or edit a newspaper, you can edit a podcast. You allowed your mind to kind of create those transferable skills relating back to all that business to be able to launch something that is now uniquely your own. So even listening to your story, I don't really think that you fell into it. I feel like it's the definition of serendipity. Like everything came together and worked to bring you into what you were supposed to do, which I absolutely love. You talked about moving from Ohio to go to Baton Rouge to start law school. Was there ever a point in time after you graduated or even while you were in law school where you thought, okay, yeah, I got to go do the attorney thing. I got to go get a job. I got to go, be a public defender or prosecutor, or I got to go do billable hours? Or did you always know that you wanted to leverage what you were learning in law school to get back into a creative space?
yeah. So, short answer, no, I did not always expect to take what I was learning and leverage it into a creative space. Even before law school, I tend to think in a very black or white way, yes or no, right? I went to a creative school. I was creative as a child. I am now an adult. An adult has a job. They go to work. They rock it. Eventually, someone is going to say, Kyla, you are phenomenal. Here is $10,000. I have so many LinkedIn posts about that, but also actual diary entries where I say, you are so great. Here is money. Because for me, like, if you're going to work and you're exchanging your time for money, then give me money to show me that you think I'm doing well.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the kudos. I'm not going to do anything with this reward.
Money.
Give me some money, right? And so I knew that about myself. And so my thing was, okay, let's get money, right? So I didn't go to law school until I was 28 years old. So I was already working. And so when I did decide to go to law school, I made it sound like it was a simple decision, but it wasn't because I was making really good money. And so I was leaving money to go learn something new. So that was its own thing. But I did not consider the two to be the same. I have always wanted to be a parent. And I think I thought that like once I became a parent, I could tap back into that creative side, singing and dancing around the house. But I had never considered combining the two. I had on my serious law student, almost attorney hat. And that was it. I was about to be Jessica Pearson.
Listen,
100%. 100%. So, I did want to work in law. So when I was in law school, I got connected with a really good mentor, and we would sit down and we would talk through my plans. And I mean, he would give me some of the first poop that I had, which is property of other people. It's when you get people's outlines and other notes that they have. And so he would tell me, hey, I know you got to take a property class. That teacher maybe take this one. And he would do those kind of things. He then connected me with other people. So I ended up with like a couple of different internships and stuff. And so I wanted to get out of law school and I wanted to go work where it didn't matter because I was gonna excel. I mean, I did have a vein in mind. I wanted to be an environmental lawyer when I went to law school. I interned with the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. And when I got there, Louisiana has the third largest Exxon plant. And there are also a lot of oil and gas lobbyists. And if you are passionate about something, you can probably sell somebody on the opposite. And I was getting tapped on the shoulder to be like, hey, will you be a lobbyist for big oil? Oh, well, that wasn't what I wanted to do. What's the money like? You know what I mean? And so then that made me really decide, okay, what do I want? And so I was like, okay, Kyla, you focus on the things you need to do now. Because I have never doubted my work ethic. And I knew that part would be fine. And it's almost embarrassing to say. I was like, you got to think about the work part second. Right now, let's get through where we are. It might have been my age, being 28 when I was in law school, but I was like, let's get through this part and then that part will figure itself out. And not on some extra whys, but just like, I've never had a problem getting a job. I don't see why now being a lawyer would change that, right? So I was just like, okay. So in law school, I decided to run for parliamentarian solely because I enjoy rules. I think in a black or white way. Oh, we have a SBA, Student Bar Association Constitution that needs to be updated and someone needs to keep quorum. Duh, of course I'll do it. I'm wearing a monogram shirt that has my initials. Yes, I am the definition of this. So I become the parliamentarian and I ran on the platform Kyla Hempill, my maiden name, the enforcer, because I was going to be the one that enforced the SBA Constitution, right? So then I do that, have a great job or have a great time. I ended up writing for the school newspaper, the Public Defender. And so then I'm a 2L now and I'm like, okay, what do I want to do next? My mentor says, I think you should be the class president. You get to speak at graduation. You get to be on the board of directors. Cool. I'm going to be editor-in-chief of the newspaper. No, you don't get it. Oh, no, I get it. I mean, I took your counsel. That's not what I'm doing. So, we sit down, we talk it through, and I was like, yeah, but like, I love writing. The newspaper right now was in this format that was like a magazine that you would like, or no, it was in like a true newspaper format. You're supposed to put stuff above the fold line because when a newspaper is laid out, you can only see the top stuff. Stuff that's on the bottom, people can't see. And I was like, this is kind of inefficient. Why do we have this? Like, it's a literal newspaper. So I was like, no, I want to redesign it. I want it to be more of a magazine format. I'm going to interview alumni. I'm going to share their stories. I'm going to interview current students. And we're going to lay out this whole thing. I'm like, I think that'll be a really good piece for me. I already love writing. I'm still going to expand my network. So I'm going to have to reach out to all these alum. This is what I want to do. Well, we don't have the budget for that. Cool. Hey, person next to the law school, would you like to put in an ad so that we can update our newspaper and do XYZ? So that was always me, but I did not see any of that stuff as being creative. Any of it. I didn't see any of it as being creative because to me, I was getting the job done, but I didn't necessarily see any of that stuff as creativity. I probably would see it as being stubborn because, again, things were black and white. But that also meant that law school was pretty challenging for me because the first thing you learn in law school is that it depends. And I had a really hard time with that. Yes. It depends on what?
Exactly. I need the answer. What are you talking about?
I don't get it. No. I wanted to work after law school. I was not sure in what role, right? But I did know that I wanted to be the person who was just kicking butt and taking names and up all night editing your briefs, giving it back to you. And you're just like, wow. And like my peers or my proteges were the ones getting all these awards and all these accolades. I didn't care about that. Again, give me the work, give me the money.
Right.
You guys are getting all the shine. And somewhere I am sitting back like, look at that I created. Look at that brain that I fostered or molded or whatever. That was what I wanted. It didn't happen that way because life does not do what we want, right? So I did not pass the Louisiana bar exam. And then I moved back to Ohio, went to get ice cream with this guy, and he asked me to be his girlfriend, and he's now my husband. And so then I took the Ohio bar exam. I did not pass that. I did not know Ohio law. Okay, for a lesson you didn't want, you wanted to know. You go to law school to learn the law of that state. There are a couple of general nationwide laws that you learn, but for the most part, you are learning the law of that state. Louisiana is a civil law state, meaning that all of our laws are codified into a state code. Ohio has a code as well, but in Louisiana, you don't go to court and say, according to this case, Dani Lyn versus Kyla Denanyoh, you go to court and say, Louisiana Civil Code 703 states that X, Y, and Z, right? And so Ohio does not do that. I did not know how to do that in Ohio. I tried very hard, but I was still trying to replace or exchange the time I sat in front of my books with the results. And the law does not do that. The law does not play favorites. The law can reward your effort, but it has to be tied to something else. It is not the same as you were here for 8 hours, you get 8 hours worth of salary. And I could not put those two together for a very long time. And so then I ended up working at a law firm. I ended up working at a law firm for 5 years, and then I went and worked virtually at a firm for a year. I was absolutely kicking butt and teaching people, and I ended up creating an entire department and training people, and I still was able to use that old knowledge of creating a binder. And now I still get to look back at the people that I mentored who are in different roles and who are like, oh, I remember you taught me this. And oh yeah, Kyla's a great teacher. Hire her for this and that. So it all worked out, and it was nothing like what I thought. Not at all. I mean, I ended up being Jessica Pearson of the operations side of my law firm, but it wasn't what I would have imagined. And it took me a really long time to even be grateful and appreciate the success that I had, because for a long time I had to realize just because I was not a practicing attorney does not mean that I wasn't successful.
Absolutely.
So like when you think about redefining, I had to redefine everything, because it's like I went from just pay me and I'll be okay to, okay, you're paying me, but like I wanted the title, because law school teaches you that.
One of the biggest things I got from just listening to that was that you didn't allow defeat to let you sit there, right? So I have had colleagues that have not passed the bar. Some of them have not passed numerous times taking the same bar exam. And kind of to your point, law school teaches you to pursue one track, like literally one, and that is the practice of law. So when you leave law school and things don't add up, you don't pass the bar, you don't get the job, you don't, make partner. You've created this identity that now, like, when one of the chips fall, it's like the whole thing crumbles because you have this one track mind. And I find that it's so incredibly difficult for a lot of us to be able to see the chips and say, okay, it's not building what they told me to build, but I can take this part and put it over here, and I can use this part and put it over here. That is, I think, a missing piece to the law school experience. And we actually talked about this before, where law schools don't teach you how to even be a lawyer. They teach you how to think, right? They teach you all of the theory, but when you get out there and you get into the workforce, even if you're not practicing, like say you go and you work in compliance or something like that, a JD alternative career, you still spend quite a few years just trying to figure out your footing. especially if you're someone who maybe is coming into the experience and doesn't have a lot of work experience behind you that you can kind of build a foundation from. It can be extremely jarring. And then you find yourself, if you're like me, in like a mid-career type of place where now I want to do something different, but I don't know how to stop doing this. So I think that your story and those parts of your story, although probably uncomfortable in those moments, are so incredibly powerful because it really shows how everything came full circle. And how
Yeah.
every single experience that you go through adds into your purpose. It takes you one step closer to your purpose. So I really, really love that. What I want to talk
I
about,
appreciate you saying that.
no problem. It's truly inspiring, actually.
Yeah.
What I want to talk about, especially since this particular podcast is focused on pivoting, right? What I want to talk about is how you were able to leverage all of these different experiences. Because you talked about earlier how you never recognized that you were working in a creative space. It was just like, this is what the job says I'm supposed to do, so I'm going to do it. But I'm going to do it with excellence, obviously. So, can you kind of discuss when you discovered how all of those previous experience built into what you're doing now and all of the skills that you acquired before, how they all work for you currently?
The way that I've gotten all these pieces to work together is it's two parts. The first part is therapy. The second part is time by myself. Okay, and so we're going to start with the least obvious, which is the time by myself, because I just talked for all this time about all the things I was doing, busy, going, running, doing, all of it. And on my podcast, You Are a Lawyer, there was a guest who said the law school conveyor belt. And I have not been able to get that out of my head because when you decide you want to go to law school, from choosing to take the LSAT to maybe you have to take it again, to maybe you have to take a prep class, from that to getting a job, it is a conveyor belt. What should I be doing? What does it look like? And there's no time to stop.
That
You
is
are
like the
going, you are
perfect
going.
analogy. Oh my God. Yeah,
Yeah.
now it's going to be stuck with me too.
It's so good. And I was like, wow. Like she kind of broke my brain a little. I was like, yeah, because there's always a next step.
Mhm.
And so my path looked like law school, parliamentarian, editor-in-chief of the newspaper. Most people's, or the idealized and in movies and stuff, looks like law school, moot court, mock trial, internship, big law. Yes. Or, law school, small clerkship, Supreme Court intern, or like working in a PD office for 2 years before you become state attorney or run for state attorney, right? So like those are the glamorized roles. And there is no time. Where is the time? I couldn't find 15 minutes to talk to my boyfriend. Where is the time by yourself? It doesn't exist. And so typically when we have time by ourselves, it is in a negative connotation. It is because I failed the bar exam, which, let me correct that. I did not earn enough points to get the score for the bar exam.
Right.
Because in law school, you start with a 0 and they count up all the points that you made and that equals up, right? It's not like you could be 100%. It's its own thing.
Yes.
If you've learned nothing else, law school in the legal profession is its own thing. So, but you don't get that time by yourself until, failed the bar exam. Here I am. Who am I now? I'm not a law student. I'm not an attorney. I don't even got a job right now because you usually take out a loan to take the bar. And so now you're just, who am I? And you're by yourself. And it's terrifying because you didn't choose the time. And then now you have to sit with all those thoughts and be like, well, who am I? Well, who do I want to be? Am I allowed to choose who I want to be? Well, that was what I wanted. Well, will it still serve me? That is when it all comes. And that's when you get overwhelmed and overstimulated and you need an outlet and a way to express that. 2025 is 10 years since I've graduated from law school. And now I seek out that alone time on my own. Okay, I have a husband. I have a child, a 4-year-old. I'm a sister, a daughter, a friend, all these things. I wake up at 5:50 every morning. because my house does not wake up till 7:30.
You
And
know.
I sit with myself
Mhm.
and I say, okay, what are we thinking about this morning? Right? And this morning it was, I am worthy of my wildest dreams. And so I'll sit there and I'll think about that for about 10 minutes. And then I'll think the lawyer side of me. So then I Google the definition of worthy, which is phenomenal. It is possessing or having the qualities or skills of being recognizable at a task. And I was like, oh, because now you got to unpack that.
Mhm.
I have the qualities or skills to have the abilities to be recognizable of my wildest dreams. And so then you got to write down, what are my wildest dreams? So this is me every morning, right? And so I'll pick a prompt and I'll choose it, or like maybe my brain will just think about something from the day before. But now I seek out that time by myself to sit and think, what is going on? What's your day? What's happening? And today was a bonus, right? It was quiet. My daughter didn't even wake up till like 8:15. I was like, I got extra time. It was phenomenal. But I forced myself to have that time by myself to figure out what is going on, to check in with myself, to say, how was this? How was that? You know? And the beautiful part is some days you wake up and it's cold and you don't want to get out of bed, and that's okay. But most of the time I crave that time. And so I will get up and I'll do it. Right. And so everyone's routine or morning can look different. Maybe you choose your lunch break or maybe you choose whatever, but that is what I had to do because I never had time, which of course you have time. It's just that when you have 15 minutes, that's not what you want to do. But I forced myself to make the time. And so that is one of the first things that has helped me get things together. The second thing is therapy. And I started therapy when I was working at the big law firm. And so I was working there. I started in 2016. I didn't launch my podcast until 2020, but I started preparing for it in 2019. So around 2017, I keep getting all these statements that I've heard before. Oh, you're so phenomenal. We need another Kyla. Not replace you. How do you duplicate yourself? How do you replicate yourself? We need more Kylas. Okay, cool. Here's your binder. Here's your stuff. We need more than that. Can you create a department? Can I? You run it. What do you mean? Can you create a department and then hire and train and write the job description and manage all these? I had to go to therapy. Hey, so I'm being challenged at work. What do I do? Oh, okay, well, tell me about your childhood. No. You don't understand. And so now in hindsight, I probably should have went to a career coach or like an executive coach, but the therapist was like, no, it's all connected. We got to talk about it all. Girl, that takes a long time. I didn't want this answer today. I called the podcast, the You Are a Lawyer podcast, as a mantra to myself, as an affirmation to myself. Because I looked up the word lawyer and it is a person who studies or works in the law. And I was like, well, I studied the law, so am I a lawyer? And I will tell people that I'm a lawyer, but it just depends on the context, right? If you are coming to me with a car accident, you're looking for an attorney, you're looking for me to go to court or challenge us or whatever, I won't say it. But I am a lawyer. I'm a person who studied the law. And for as busy as it was, I still have so many lessons and so many trainings that I learned from that I take with me to other places. And I was like, you're a lawyer, right? I probably could have called it You Are a Badass. The book probably already existed, but I probably could have because that was me saying to myself, you're a lawyer. Do you know what you just did? You are running this whole thing. You are at these tables with these big wigs. You are doing all this stuff. But I only know how to do that because of law school. I only know how to do that because of my mentor. I only know how to do that because of seeing and watching other people, right? And so therapy and time by myself have changed absolutely everything because I was really upset. I was very, very upset. I knew I didn't want You Are a Lawyer to be a I Hate the Bar Exam podcast. Mm-hmm. And even that has healed me, right? But I was mad. I was frustrated. And I had just paid for 3 years of school, or just signed the loan paperwork for 3 years of school and did all this work, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And so the only way through the fact that my plan changed, the only way through the fact that I had to pivot was to get my mind correct and to realize that I was still a valuable person, even though I was not in the role that I thought I was supposed to have, right? I would have been a completely different person. I know that. I mean, my husband and I used to sit on the floor or like on the couch next to each other working, super workaholics, just like both with our laptops doing, loved it, right? And that was me and my husband for years. It was just us like working beside each other, like grinding. That was the whole goal. That was the point. And even that had to change, right? Because he thought I was going to be this big wig attorney too. And like, I used to joke about like, yeah, when we go to like the firm this and the firm that, you know, when I get a boat, I'll let you drive it, all of that stuff. And then the plan completely shifts. And so even he had to change the way that things were going to work, right? So therapy and time alone helps you change it all. And people don't like to hear this part. They like to hear the first half.
To do da 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 da. They don't want to hear about the self-work that you have to do.
Because it's hard. Yes. Oh my goodness, it's so hard. Like, there was one of the prompts I had, I am where I am doing what I should be doing at the time I need it or something. I would be in tears because you read it, and at first we read stuff all day long. But by the eighth time you're reading it, you're putting different inflections on different words. And you're like, I'm where I need to be. And then I would just be crying and crying and crying, right? And then some days I read the manifestation or whatever the little like affirmation card is, and then I move on to something else. It's not, there's no pattern. It's not black and white. And that is why I need it so much, because it's using my own tools to kind of break me. Mm-hmm. And that's what I need. And I need to do it myself too, right? Like the therapist does it in a different way. Yes. But I need to do it for myself as well.
Yes. One thing I want people to take away from this as well is that it takes time. It takes time. You use the perfect analogy of the law school conveyor belt. I think it can be translated into different industries, but I think in totality, we often just have these timelines of like what we want our life to look like. And it is conveyor belt in its structure where you just go from one thing to the next to the next. There's no rest. There's no debrief. There's no, hey, let's take a second and review our opportunities for growth, right? There's none of mm-hmm. that. And so many times too, when you are so used to pushing and pushing and pushing, that space of time that you are taking to be by yourself, that you're taking to go through therapy and do the inner work, feels like laziness because you can't see the productivity in it. But if you're going to pivot, I think that is the work that, although no one wants to do, there's no like appeal to it. It's necessary, because then you're just going to jump from the frying pan into the fire, into something else that you hate or doesn't fulfill you or is not aligned with your purpose. And I think the number one thing, you touched on it just a while ago, that people that are pivoting need to understand is that you are more than any job title. You are more than any role. You are more than any test. There are so many law students or aspiring law students that I have mentored that are like, I have to get this score on the LSAT. I have to. And you said it earlier, like there is nobody's getting hundreds in law school. Nobody's getting any real hundreds in law school. It is, did you get enough to get by? The person who got the most points, they set the standard. They are now the A. Even if that was 50 out of 100, they just got the A and everyone else falls underneath them. And that's the competitive structure of the process. So coming into the process thinking like, I have to be this person, I have to get this score. And if I don't, that's indicative of my ability to be in this field and what type of lawyer I will be and what type of career I will have, I think is so destructive. And it really necessitates that inner work. When you get to a point where it's like, yeah, we got to do something else, you have to unlearn all of that. So I want to say that I really appreciate you for even sharing that, because that can be very vulnerable. You kind of put yourself out there, and we all deal with our own insecurities, but I think it's so important for people to hear that you need to value therapy, number one, because there could be some underlying reasons why you feel like you have to have life pan out in a certain way, but also like learn to love your own company. You can't hear your own thoughts until you quiet all the other ones, all the other noise that's around you. So that was really a really,
Yeah.
really valuable perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get quiet, but it can look differently for everybody, right? Maybe your time is when you cook.
Yeah.
And so your hands are busy, and so then your mind wanders, right? Because I do a lot of social media posts, and a lot of time I'll be people love this video. I was literally sitting on the couch eating like a sushi bowl. And I was like, it looks like I'm eating, but I'm thinking about that invoice. I'm wondering if I've emailed Danielle my bio. I'm doing this. Typically, it's when you're not working that then your brain starts to remind you of all the things you said you were going to do or the things you want to do. And so it looks different for everyone. And like when I sit there, I have a pen and paper too, because my brain is going to say, hey, did you do that? And I need to write it down so that I'm not then wondering about that. And then I can get back to the task at hand. And it takes time, right? But I would say, understand that when you're pivoting, the skills and the tools that you had before, some of them will come with you. They will probably just look differently. Because I bill my time. I have billed and set aside 2 hours to talk to you today, right? And so when you bill your time in a law firm, you record what you're doing in 6-minute increments. It is very difficult to catch on to. It's very simple. It is difficult to catch on to. And then for me, after 5.5 years, I couldn't turn it off. But now I use it so that if there's any task every month I'm doing for more than 8 hours, I got to hire an assistant or outsource it, period. Right? I even was daydreaming about hiring a coach for You Are a Lawyer. Because I was like, okay, now you're taking over too much time. And that was what spawned all of this. But I was like, no, scale back to only recording 1 day a week or like 1 day a month. Because I was doing 3 Fridays a month and I scaled back to like just one. Because I'm like, anything I'm doing more than 8 hours, we need to put on somebody else's plate. I need to have time to think, time to ideate, time to enjoy the fruits of my labor, time to be a guest on someone else's show. Right. And so I still carry with me billing my time and I will write it down. It's not quite as detailed, but I'll turn on like my Pomodoro counter, which will track your time in 38 minutes and then give you a 5-minute break. And so I'll do that. And I do not let myself skip the break. I don't care if that means go to the bathroom, go get a drink of water, just look out the window. I will take my 5-minute break and then I'll hit it again, and get back into work. But like, bring the task with you. I think a lot of time people are afraid of pivoting because they're like, I wasted all that time. Mm-hmm. None of it is wasted. All of it will carry with you, even if just in a different way.
So now that you have pivoted and now you're in the podcast hosting space, the content creation space, you're back in your project management space where you really thrive. Do you define success differently now than you did when you were Kyla, who was thinking about being a judge? Kyla, who applied to Southern and got in, and Kyla, who graduated from Southern and had some bumps in the road and had to kind of figure out, where do I go from here? Do you define success differently now? And what does success look like to you now?
I don't define it. I don't think about success differently because I like to congratulate myself. I tell myself I'm successful all day long. I will literally be like, look at you. You just did your meditation. You are so successful. Look at that success in your life. All day long. But for me as a super professional, I need that. Right. I get other people probably say good job or you killed that. And I'm just like, look at all this success. So yes, I think that success is having a goal and working towards it. And so for me, I think that is different. Now, I say that because I always thought that before law school and maybe in law school, I thought that I was going to get a feeling and one day be walking through the big office, looking at the marble table and be like, I'm successful. I think I thought it was just going to hit me. You know what I mean? Like you walk past the window and you see yourself and you're just like, success.
Almost like in a music video.
Almost like, yeah. And I mean, I grew up, I was watching Suits. It was a very big deal. If I was watching Grey's Anatomy, I might be a doctor. Like that was the thing. And so I was like, that was what I wanted. That looked like success to me, right? Jessica Pearson, she was the only one, definitely the only partner crushing it, completely competent. completely competent. Because I used to always think that she was just like confident or like, you know what I mean? I never thought she was all that. I always knew that she had the backing. But like for me, you're confident because you have the competence, and then you also can acknowledge that you know some stuff. You're not shy and timid when you know what you're talking about when you come into a room. And that was what I learned from her. And so to me now, I know that success is a moving target. And I know that that's not really fair to say, but being able to record with you during the middle of the day is success. No one is looking for me. I'm not missing a deadline anywhere else. I have created a life that allows me to record with you in the middle of the day. That is successful, right? I would say that I celebrate myself all the time by saying that I am successful. And I've realized that it's not something that I'm not going to just like hit it one day. It's not something I check off of a list. It is knowing that I'm working towards the stuff that I want. And so right now, the stuff that I want is complete flexibility and options. And so I am working towards that and I have it. But also with that definition, it means it's going to change. It means it's going to shift. It means it's going to move. It means that I might go from wanting flexibility to options to wanting more of a structure or wanting whatever. I'm like, even with this is growth. I'm like, look at the success in my mindset. Because this is completely different for me to be like, yeah, I'm comfortable with this.
Success moves as you move. It evolves as you evolve. And I think that can be seen as success as well. You're no longer tied to like these rigid milestones. Success is what you make it to be.
Yeah.
I think even your practice of applauding yourself for completing tasks, we don't do that enough. We wait until this, like you said, the grandiose moment of like when I'm walking into the negotiation room and I'm like, oh yeah, I've made it, with the floor, the ceiling to floor windows and the tailored suits and all of that. You create this look of success. So when you feel like you haven't attained it, you feel like you're not successful, and it negates all of these other things that you've done in your life up until that point. I think it's so important. How you define success now is that now it's not tied to any one completion of a thing. It's like, if I put my mind to do this today and I did it today, I was successful today. I think that that's a very healthy way to look at it. And I think that it's a way that we should start looking at success more. And there are intangible things. The fact that we can record at noon on a Friday and we don't have to be in someone's office and tied down to other external deadlines. Well, I'm still working, but even with my job, I have a certain level of flexibility where I can pursue things like this. That is success, and success is going to change as you change, and you should allow yourself to redefine success at every personal evolution that you have. So I really like that your idea of success is exactly what I make it. And if I decide tomorrow that success looks differently, then that's what success is to me. I love that. So I want to kind of wrap up our episode with talking to the listeners. I want you to tell the listeners what I think you want them to take away from this episode, and a piece of advice for anyone who maybe finds themselves at a place in life that they never expected to be, and they kind of don't really know how to put the pieces together. What would you tell them?
Yeah. What I would tell someone who may not know how to put the pieces together or finds themselves in an unexpected way is you are always your own boss. And you have to see yourself as always being your own boss, period. Not a caveat, not a if you're not working, not period. Because what would you give your boss? Oh, well, my boss wanted me to do this, and so I have to turn it in. Okay, so if you tell yourself you're going to do something, then you have to do that. Yeah. You are always your own boss. Well, I told myself I was going to eat better, but I'm not in the mood anymore. Really? Would you do that with your boss? Probably not. You are your own boss. There is nobody who is going to come and sit there and be like, now, you said you weren't going to do that. And when you think of yourself as your own boss, when you think of yourself as being in control, you will realize it's not about someone seeing that you did it. It's about the fact that you told yourself you were going to do it and you did it. Right. And so even as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, I've said this to someone before, and the way I explained it was stop negotiating with yourself. So that might be how the lawyers pick it up. I said I was going to drink 8 glasses of water. I'm not in the mood. I'm only doing 6. I should be proud I had 6. Okay. But we both know you're going to be up in the middle of the night like, man, I couldn't even drink 6 glasses of water. You are your own boss. Nobody's going to hold you accountable. Nobody is coming to do all this stuff. You are the one who does it. Even when, let's be real. Let's say you got to go in the office. I can't believe I have to do this. Really? Don't go. I can't not go. Someone's going to look for me. Okay. So does that mean you're going? You're not going, right? And so you got to think about that for yourself. Like, we have so much autonomy. You are your own person. No one can come. Someone could come and try to pull me off this chair, but I could fight them. Like, we forget that we are moving around in the world. No, I have to pay my mortgage. You don't. You'll be sued. You don't have to. You get to pay your mortgage. You are your own boss. You are your own boss. You get to listen to this podcast. Danielle didn't tell you had to. Nobody's paying you to listen, right? And I think for me, and everything you just heard about learning and working, for me, I am my own boss is the thing that makes me realize I am in control. For somebody else, it might be, I hold all the power, or I am whatever. Right. For me, it is I am my own boss, because there are a lot of times and a lot of things that I would do for a boss, working late, skipping lunch, picking up a boss's lunch. Kyla, why haven't you eaten today? You are your own boss. Why haven't you done all the stuff that you would give another person? Oh, well, nobody asked me to do it. You asked you to do it. You don't matter. You are your own boss. And for me, that really helps me to get through every single step. When I have these recordings, I share this basement office with my husband. And so his stuff is over there. And so I send him a calendar invite for 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after when a scheduled time is there. And we put it on our family calendar. And, I'll come down here and I'll come and do it. I'm like, hey, I need you to leave. And he's like, oh, I know, I'm finishing something. My stuff is as important as yours. I am my own boss. We got, you know what I mean? And so whatever that looks like for you, I just want you to remember that whether you pivot, whether you stay, I hope it removes a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the frustration. What do I do? What do you want to do? Well, but if I do that, they're not going to like it. Well, you like it because you are your own boss. But I can't do that. I've never done it before. Would your boss figure it out, or would you do the research for your boss? Well, you are your own boss, so you get to do it either way. You are your own boss. Take back that control. Truly see how much autonomy you have. And when you think about all the things you would do for an employer or a job or whatever person in leadership is, think about that for yourself. And I dare you to try it. And I promise you'll change things, because it is hard for us to see ourselves, even though we are ourselves. That's so silly. I saw someone talking about it on social media, and they were like, if you think you're attractive, you're probably way more attractive than you even think, because you see yourself every day. You don't have any idea
what other people see you. Yeah.
You don't have any idea. And I heard that and I was like, wow, I'm more powerful than I even think, right? But we have to try to see ourselves that way. And one of the practices is to think of yourself as being your own boss. When other people ask you to do things, there are so many things that you will decide, I have to do it, or, oh, I can't do this thing that I said I was going to do because they asked me. You have to give yourself that. And I promise you, whether you pivot, whether you stay, whether you break someone's heart, whether you break your heart, you know what I mean? Because when we have these ideas in our mind, we don't want to change them. That was what I was comfortable with. But if your boss changed the plan, you're not going to be like, this is what I planned. This is what we're doing. Really? You probably wouldn't do that. So don't do it for yourself, because you are your own boss.
Well, Kyla, thank you so much for joining us on Redefined Radio.
Yeah.
Before we let you go ahead and let the listeners know where they can find you, your social media, obviously plug your podcast, and let us know anything that maybe is in the works that you might want us to know about.
Yeah. So if you love to hear about people who take risk and change careers, listen to the You Are Lawyer podcast. You do not have to be a lawyer to listen. I get a lot of feedback from people who are just like, wow, how did they do that? Right? I'm a big fan of taking risk and changing careers. But there's so many risks that we take that we kind of don't even look at. And I love to share those stories, and I love for people to listen to them and get inspired. So if you are a person who just thinks, okay, I could probably learn something from Kyla, I want to be in her orbit, check out my Instagram page, which is KD Creative, CREATIVE_BIZ. So that is the name of my business. KD Creative stands for Kyla Denanyoh Creative. I talk about podcasting. I talk about being a boss. I talk about why you should expand your brand in every possible way that you can, right? And your brand is your reputation. Your brand is your work ethic. Your brand is the way you show up in the world. These are the things I talk about because this is what I tell my clients when I work with them. Yes, we're starting a podcast so we can tell people your story. What is your story? Because that's the first step. What's your story? Oh, I don't have a story. Well, okay, why are you paying me money and you don't have a story? You have a story, right? So if you're interested in any of those things, that is absolutely the best page to follow because you'll see a whole bunch of stuff that'll probably like spark you to get up and go and do something. And then yeah, those are the main two. From both of those, I talk about my personal YouTube, I talk about my personal Instagram and everything else. But yes, current projects, I launch podcasts for business owners. So if you know any business owners and you're like, they're phenomenal and no one knows about them, send them to me, right? Business owners are pretty shy and humble, and I am a megaphone. I will tell everybody and my mama and their mama about your business. And we can do that all with podcasting. So that is KD Creative, where I launch podcasts for business owners. Okay. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kyla. Before we go, remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. We are on YouTube at Redefined Radio. You can follow me personally on Instagram at Dani, DaniLyn _redefined. You can find me there on Instagram or on TikTok. But thank you again so much, Kyla, for joining us. Thank you for inspiring our listeners. And we will see you again in the next video.